What's up, my dudes? The old milestone is back at it again, boys. So, we have a new track here, right? The Indianapolis 2020 replica track. So, this might be a little confusing to some of you guys, naturally, because this comes in the 252-stroke DLC pack. Okay? So, this is just going out to some of you guys that still think Milestone is just this heartwarming company that's just doing everything that they need to for you, and they're not trying to be money hungry or greedy or anything like that. I mean, good God, man. Like, there is absolutely no question at all. It ain't even up for debate that this track right here should have just been in the base version of this game. Why in the hell did they just throw this in the 252-stroke pack? Why would they do that? Oh, and by the way, just saying, there's a lot of people getting this conspiracy theory, that Milestone is starting to just cut their content before the game even comes out, right? So, like, they could have just had the 2 strokes in there when the game first came out. It was already ready. It was already, developed and working in the game and everything. They could have just had this Indianapolis track in there from the beginning, but they cut all that out before the game comes out to make it pay DLC. I mean, it's pretty damn obvious when, all this DLC like this is coming out, like a month after the game comes out? It's pretty damn obvious what's going on here, right? By the way, I just want to say, do not buy this 252-stroke DLC just for this track right here, because it ain't worth it. This is not only should this track have just been in the game, but like, this is the literal definition of when they get the scaling too small on a track. This track feels like it don't even belong in this game. It's weird. This is like 0.8 to 1 scaling or some shit. This is a perfect example right here. When you compare the width of the track, the jump sizes, the main triple sizes, the scaling of this entire track compared to any other stock default track in this game. This is what I mean by how you don't want to get to, trying to make everything exactly 1-to-1 scaling to real life Supercross. You have to expand the scaling because it's an arcade video game. It's an arcade dirt bike game. You got to make the jumps a little bigger. Got to widen that track out just a little bit bigger than it would be in real life to give you the proper amount of fun factor and skill gap and replayability. Well, this Indianapolis DLC track right here is a perfect example of why you cannot have that smaller scaling, 1-to-1 scaling type. Could you imagine if this entire game had this kind of track scaling? Like, good Lord, man. Good Lord. But, thank God, literally every other track in this game has bigger scaling than this, so it's not the end of the world that this track is small scaling, but I'm just saying, like, this is a prime example of what I mean when I talk about they got to make the scaling bigger. They got to make everything a little, there's some of those Milestone blind defenders out there that try to act like anything Milestone does is just old, grand, and great, and you're just hating on them, Spencer. And, oh, really? So, they don't give you 2 strokes in the first 3 Supercross games, even though they're in their MXGP games. Then they finally give them to you in Supercross 4, but it's paid DLC. And it's only the 252 strokes. They split the DLC. And then one of the default tracks that should have just already been in there, instead of them just giving that to you out of the, the goodness of their hearts, nope, that's in the paid DLC package. Just to put just a little more of that, trying to make it more worth buying the DLC, trying to strip every little penny out of you. And I hope you realize what's going on here. You're getting scammed by a kindergartner, all right? Like, straight up. By the way, if I wasn't making content on this shit, I can promise you I would not be buying this DLC. I promise you I wouldn't. The whole reason I even bought it doing that shit is because I'm making content on it. I'm trying to show you, tell you all the reasons why it's money hungry, greedy. The shit should have already been in there, right? If I just, only ever bought the things that I thought was really worth your money, I don't know. I mean, there would be a lot of Milestone games I wouldn't even cover at all. There would be a lot of shit that would just never be covered on my channel, So I have to do it to cover the shit, to talk about it, right? I'm not saying, oh my God, this DLC is great, it's worth your money, go buy it. Like, I mean, it's big because it's a 2-stroke DLC and it's another, default stock track in this shit, but still, you are getting played, bro. You are getting scammed, sham-wowed. Like, I don't even know what the hell. I don't even know what this is at this point. It's unreal. But, like, this track is actually a joke. I just wanted to say that. This feels like a backyard beginner Supercross track compared to the other ones in the game. This kind of reminds me of some of those really small scaling tracks that we saw in the very first Supercross game that were just mind-numbingly basic. Like, yeah, I've seen a couple people in the comments talk about they could add this track in there as like the very first track that you ride on in the campaign or whatever, because it's like, a lot smaller jumps, easier to get everybody used to the physics and all that. And I do see what you're saying on that, similar to how Reflex's first Supercross track is, a lot more simple, basic rhythms, than a lot, that very first Supercross track on Reflex is nowhere near the rhythm complexity of like Fort Dodge Round 2 or some shit like that, So, I mean, I can understand that, but it's just hilarious how this is the track that they make in their paid DLC. This is the one that's paid DLC. It's like such a step backwards, in the track scaling and everything. You're going to ride on this track for about 10 minutes and it's going to be like, yeah, all right, let's go back to those other default stock tracks in the game. But like, I mean, yeah, when you come around, there's like a triple over the finish line, which was not intended to, you were not intended to supposed to be able to hit that at all, but you can because the scaling is so small. This is just a prime example of when you make the jumps like too close together to where you don't have that like proper jumping, landing, down in transitions. It seems like half the time you're landing like on the face of the next jump because everything's too close and cramped together. The track's too narrow. The main Supercross triple on this track, literally, and I'm not kidding you, literally looks like the size of a like standard double jump on what would be like a standard double jump in any other Supercross game. You know what I mean? I mean, it's tiny. It is tiny. So either way, I just wanted to prove the point of like, could you imagine having an entire because some of you guys that are thinking, oh, Spencer, 1-to-1 scaling, there's no problem with that. I talk about that a lot in these modern day MXGP games. They've gotten so far away from the jumping and all that jump size stuff that you used to have back in MXGP 3. Now they're making everything so 1-to-1 scaling, barely coming off the ground. So, to all of you milestone blind defenders that try to say, well, of course, Spencer, of course it's supposed to be, exact real life scaling and trying to be, as accurate as to the bike to real life scaling to the track and all that. All right, well, just imagine a world where a new Supercross game comes out and every single one of the default tracks has this kind of scaling on it. Just imagine that. That's the experience you would have if they 100% stuck to the 1-to-1 scaling, make everything exactly, jump size scaling to the bike, as realistic, quote unquote realistic as scaling as you can possibly have. That's what you would get. And to some of you guys that don't see the issue with that, I don't even know what to tell you, because That would be the most boring game I have ever played in my entire life. If they made an entire Supercross game, every track had this kind of scaling on it. It's just too small, man. It's too cramped for an arcade dirt bike game. There's just no doubt about that. This reminds me a lot of how the vibe I get on some of those like Reflex custom replica Supercross tracks where you'll get those, custom track makers on Reflex that'll go in there and try to make like a Las Vegas 2014 replica or whatever the hell it is, and they try to make everything super like exact 1-to-1 scaling. You just get this boring ass experience. You just get this mind-numbing, repetitive, barely coming off of the ground, no fun factor. The jump, trajectory, transition, landing, jumping up out of a rhythm shit just don't flow right. The track just don't flow right when they make the scaling like this. It don't matter what game it's in. This is too small scaling for a Supercross track in a game, period. Like, there's just no doubt about it. But either way. So yeah, I was actually shocked. I didn't even realize that this track was in this 252-stroke DLC. Why the hell would they just put a track in? That just doesn't even make any sense. Milestone, heaven forbid you just give this track to us. This piece of shit, play on it for 5 seconds track. Heaven forbid you just give this one to us for free. Nope, can't even do that. Can't even do that. I mean, it gets to a point where it's just like, man, there's just, like, who is steering this ship over there at Milestone? I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, it's just so weird, too, because they're starting to get their head on straight with, like, giving you more skill gaps, certainly giving you more jump, fun factor, leaning forward and backwards, inertia, all that type of shit. They're certainly giving you more of that. But, like, when it comes to the money-hungry, greedy shit that should have already been in there, cutting content, making you pay for it as paid DLC, they are no better than they ever have been. Some would say they're even worse now. But that is one aspect that Milestone has not improved on at all over the past years, is how money-hungry, greedy they are. They still only give you one free ride track. By the way, in the first Supercross game, they didn't even give you one. It made you pay that as paid DLC, right? Instead of just giving you the shit in Supercross 3's track editor where you could color the tough blocks and, give you a little bit more customization to your track. Nope. That's paid DLC in Supercross 3. My word. My word. So then, here we are in Supercross 4. Oh, you want 2 strokes finally in the 4th rendition of these Supercross games? No. We're going to make you pay extra for it. Oh, you want, like, one of the default tracks that should have already been in the game? No. We're going to make you pay for that, too. Oh. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man.